The Bermuda Triangle occupies a unique place in modern folklore. Stretching across a broad area of the western Atlantic Ocean, commonly bounded by Miami, Bermuda, and Puerto Rico, it has become one of the most famous maritime legends in the world. Over the course of the 20th century, stories of vanished ships and missing aircraft transformed an ordinary region of ocean into a symbol of unexplained disappearance. Yet the history of the Bermuda Triangle is not simply a story about mysteries at sea. It is also a story about exploration, commerce, technological change, media culture, and the way societies construct legends from real events. Long before the term Bermuda Triangle entered popular vocabulary, the waters of the Western Atlantic were among the most heavily traveled sea lanes in the world. For centuries, European ships crossed this region carrying settlers, soldiers, enslaved people, manufactured goods, and agricultural products between Europe, the Caribbean, and North America. The Gulf Stream, a powerful ocean current flowing northward along the eastern coast of the United States, accelerated voyages but also created navigational challenges. Sudden storms, powerful winds, shallow reefs, and the immense scale of the Atlantic made maritime travel inherently dangerous. Shipwrecks were common throughout the age of sail, not only in this region but across the world's oceans. The earliest stories later associated with the Bermuda Triangle often reached back to the voyages of Christopher Columbus in the late 15th century. During his first voyage across the Atlantic in 1492, Columbus recorded unusual observations in his journal, including strange lights and variations in compass readings. Later writers would cite these passages as evidence that the region possessed mysterious properties. Historians, however, generally view such accounts within the context of early navigation. Compass variation was a poorly understood phenomenon at the time, and sailors crossing unfamiliar waters often encountered observations that seemed remarkable. While Columbus's writings became part of the Bermuda Triangle mythology centuries later, they were not originally interpreted as evidence of a supernatural zone. Throughout the colonial era and into the 19th century, thousands of vessels traversed the Atlantic route surrounding Bermuda, the Bahamas, Florida, and the Caribbean. Shipwreck records reveal that many losses resulted from well-understood causes. Hurricanes routinely devastated fleets. Coral reefs, particularly around the Bahamas, posed serious hazards to navigation. Errors in charting and navigation led vessels onto shoals or into storms. Maritime insurance records and naval archives document these dangers in considerable detail. Nevertheless, isolated disappearances inevitably occurred. When ships vanished without leaving survivors or wreckage, speculation often filled the absence of evidence. The modern history of the Bermuda Triangle began not during the age of sail but during the 20th century. Advances in aviation introduced a new dimension to travel across the region. Aircraft now crossed stretches of ocean where emergency landings were difficult and radio communication remained imperfect. Disappearances that might once have involved only ships now included airplanes, creating a broader pattern that later writers would weave into a single narrative. One of the most influential incidents occurred in December 1945 with the disappearance of Flight 19, a group of 5 U.S. Navy torpedo bombers conducting a routine training mission from Florida. The flight was led by Lieutenant Charles Taylor, an experienced aviator. During the exercise, radio transmission suggested that Taylor had become uncertain of his position. He reported compass problems and appeared to believe that the aircraft were located somewhere different from their actual location. As fuel supplies dwindled, communication became increasingly confused. Eventually, contact was lost. The disappearance of Flight 19 attracted immediate attention because of the number of aircraft involved and because extensive searches failed to locate the crews. The tragedy deepened when a rescue aircraft dispatched to assist in the search also disappeared after takeoff, likely due to an explosion. In later years, popular accounts often presented Flight 19 as an inexplicable mystery. However, investigations by historians and aviation experts have generally pointed toward navigational confusion, deteriorating weather conditions, fuel exhaustion, and the challenges of overwater flight as the most probable explanations. The absence of wreckage, while frustrating, was not unprecedented given the vast search area and the dynamic nature of the ocean. During the decades following World War II, commercial aviation expanded dramatically. Passenger aircraft crossed the Caribbean and Atlantic with increasing frequency. At the same time, newspaper and magazine stories began collecting reports of disappearances into a single geographic framework. Rather than viewing each incident individually, writers started presenting them as parts of a larger pattern. A significant milestone occurred in 1950 when journalist Edward Van Winkle Jones published an article discussing a series of disappearances in the Atlantic region. His work did not yet establish the modern legend, but it helped connect previously separate incidents. Several years later, writer George X. Sand expanded upon these ideas in a magazine article that emphasized mysterious elements and unexplained losses. By the 1960s, the concept had gained momentum. The phrase Bermuda Triangle itself was popularized in 1964 by writer Vincent Gaddis. In an article examining unexplained disappearances, Gaddis described a triangular area of ocean where ships and aircraft were allegedly vanishing under unusual circumstances. The geometric simplicity of the concept proved powerful. A triangle could be easily visualized on a map, and the name provided a memorable label for a collection of stories that might otherwise have remained disconnected. As interest grew, authors increasingly searched historical records for incidents that could be incorporated into the narrative. Some disappearances involved genuine mysteries, while others became distorted through repetition. Details were sometimes omitted, altered, or exaggerated. Cases that had plausible explanations were occasionally presented as entirely unexplained. The legend expanded not only through documented events but through the accumulation of storytelling itself. No individual contributed more to the popular image of the Bermuda Triangle than author Charles Berlitz. In 1974, Berlitz published a best-selling book that introduced millions of readers to the phenomenon. Drawing together dozens of incidents, he argued that conventional explanations were inadequate. The book suggested a variety of possibilities, ranging from unusual geophysical forces to remnants of lost civilizations. Berlitz's work appeared during a period of widespread public fascination with paranormal subjects, ancient mysteries, and unexplained phenomena. The timing proved ideal, and the Bermuda Triangle became an international cultural sensation. The popularity of such theories generated intense debate. Scientists, historians, sailors, and aviation experts questioned whether the Bermuda Triangle represented a genuine anomaly. One of the most influential skeptical responses came from researcher Lawrence Cush. Examining original records, weather reports, Coast Guard investigations, and contemporary news accounts, Cush concluded that many Bermuda Triangle stories contain significant inaccuracies. He found that some vessels cited as mysterious disappearances had actually been located, while others had vanished during severe storms. In certain cases, incidents had occurred outside the boundaries of the supposed triangle altogether. Cush's work reflected a broader scholarly approach. Rather than assuming that a collection of disappearances required a single extraordinary explanation, researchers emphasized the importance of analyzing each case individually. The Western Atlantic contained some of the busiest shipping and aviation corridors on Earth. A high volume of traffic naturally produces a high number of accidents over time. When considered in proportion to overall traffic, the rate of loss within the Bermuda Triangle does not appear significantly greater than in comparable regions of ocean. Natural explanations have nevertheless continued to attract interest because the region does possess environmental characteristics capable of creating hazardous conditions. The Gulf Stream can rapidly disperse floating debris, making wreckage difficult to recover. Tropical storms and hurricanes develop frequently throughout the Atlantic basin. Sudden weather changes can challenge both experienced sailors and pilots. Shallow reefs and shifting currents complicate navigation in many areas. These factors do not explain every individual case, but they help account for why searches sometimes yield few results. Other theories have focused on magnetic anomalies. Some proponents have argued that unusual compass behavior contributes to navigational errors. Scientists acknowledge that magnetic variation occurs across different regions of the Earth, but they generally find no evidence that the Bermuda Triangle possesses unique magnetic properties capable of explaining extraordinary numbers of disappearances. Compass variation is a known and measurable phenomenon that navigators routinely account for. Another frequently discussed hypothesis involves methane hydrates, deposits of frozen methane trapped beneath the seafloor. Some researchers have suggested that large methane releases could reduce water density and potentially affect buoyancy. While methane hydrates are a legitimate scientific subject, evidence linking them directly to Bermuda Triangle disappearances remains limited. Most experts regard the theory as an interesting possibility rather than an established explanation. Speculative theories have gone much further. Over the years, writers have proposed connections to extraterrestrial activity, time distortions, underwater civilizations, and remnants of the legendary island of Atlantis. These ideas have played a major role in popular culture, inspiring television programs, novels, films, and documentaries. However, they remain unsupported by verifiable evidence. Historians studying the Bermuda Triangle generally distinguish between such imaginative interpretations and explanations grounded in documented records. By the late 20th century, the Bermuda Triangle had evolved beyond a geographic location into a cultural phenomenon. It became a modern myth shaped by mass media. Television specials dramatized disappearances. Paperback books presented mysterious narratives to wide audiences. The concept entered classrooms, conversations, and entertainment. For many people, the phrase itself evoked a sense of uncertainty about the limits of human knowledge. Yet the endurance of the legend reveals something important about the relationship between history and storytelling. Human beings are naturally drawn to mysteries, especially those involving incomplete evidence. A ship that sinks during a storm can be explained. A vessel that disappears without witnesses invites speculation. The absence of definitive answers creates space for imagination. Over time, repeated retellings often emphasize the mysterious while minimizing the ordinary circumstances that surround an event. Today, the Bermuda Triangle remains one of the world's most recognizable legends. Ships and aircraft continue to cross the region every day as part of normal commercial operations. Modern navigation systems, satellite communications, weather forecasting, and search and rescue technologies have dramatically improved safety. The area is no longer viewed by maritime and aviation professionals as uniquely dangerous, although it remains subject to the same environmental risks that affect many oceanic regions. The historical significance of the Bermuda Triangle lies not in proving the existence of an unexplained force but in understanding how legends emerge. The story developed through a combination of real tragedies, incomplete records, media amplification, and the enduring appeal of mystery. It demonstrates how modern societies construct folklore from contemporary events, transforming accidents and disappearances into narratives that capture public imagination for generations. In that sense, the Bermuda Triangle is more than a place on a map. It is a case study in how history, uncertainty, and storytelling intersect, reminding us that the search for explanations often reveals as much about human curiosity as it does about the events themselves. And perhaps that is why the Bermuda Triangle continues to fascinate people decades after its most famous stories first entered the public imagination. Whether viewed as a collection of misunderstood accidents, an enduring modern legend, or a mystery that still leaves room for unanswered questions, it remains one of the most discussed maritime phenomena in history. What do you think explains the Bermuda Triangle's lasting appeal? Do you believe the evidence points to ordinary causes, or is there still something unexplained about these disappearances? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and if you have a story, perspective, or experience related to the Bermuda Triangle, feel free to share it with others as part of the ongoing conversation surrounding one of the world's most famous legends.